What key steps do you want to see the Trump administration take now? So, for example, are there specific bans, timelines, or reforms you'd urge NTIA and the FCC to prioritize to keep so the U.S. keeps the momentum on 5G?
Well, certainly assuming that Senator Cruz's pipeline approach holds, which we, of course, hope it will, that gives us a good roadmap for the future. But in the meantime, once the FCC's auction authority is reestablished, Chairman Carr has already charted a pretty aggressive agenda on wireless issues. AWS-3, for example, C-band, the upper C-band, which is the counterpart to the first part of the C-band auction that we auctioned in 2020. So I think that's going to be really important for them to move on in the near term. And in the mid to long term, of course, all of those different mid-band spectrum assets that Senator Cruz just talked about that are really useful. That's the sweet spot for 5G. When I left office in 2021, the U.S. was leading the world in terms of 5G availability using those bands. And now we've kind of sunk behind China, believe it or not. And so this would help us right the ship in a way that's absolutely critical.
You led me very neatly into my next question. It's oftentimes framed that spectrum is a national security issue. And both in competing with adversaries and safeguarding our military communications, one FCC official noted the U.S. has about 380 megahertz of mid-band spectrum for 5G, while China has roughly 4 times more. Do you share concerns that America risks falling behind, and how do we free up crucial spectrum for commercial use and to protect vital federal systems at the same time?
I'm tremendously concerned about it. When I left office, we were essentially at par with China in terms of the amount of spectrum that is available in mid-band. And as you pointed out, that's now a 4x gap, which is tremendous. And I know it sounds to the average person kind of abstract. What do we care if China is 400 or 1,000 megahertz ahead of us? But it's sort of the network effects that flow from that.
Right.
So going back a ways, I know it's hard to remember because we live in the day-to-day, but in the 4G economy where the United States led in the development of LTE, that came along with a tremendous amount of wireless innovation and investment. The app economy as we know it was built on America's mobile platform because we had those spectrum assets in place for companies to be able to innovate around. The same thing is going to happen with 5G and 6G, and arguably even to a greater extent because of AI and some of the other technologies that Senator Cruz talked about, which are going to rely increasingly on mobile platforms. And so the country that leads, the region that leads in terms of wireless spectrum policy is going to get all the benefits that flow from that. And for better or worse, I would argue for worse, the Chinese have placed a major priority on not just domination in 5G, but all of the other adjacent technologies like AI. And they're choosing national champions like Huawei and ZTE to help lead the charge. And so it's not enough for us to say we can rely on this implicit notion that America is always going to lead the world no matter what the policy is. We have to be proactive and aggressive in competing with China and other regional and national rivals. And this is a critical part in doing that.